there's a lot of people online, and there's also a lot of people that write about like this connection between like biblical stuff and like the modern UFO stuff. And I feel like there is a weird faction of people in the government who are like battling on this UFO narrative.
I don't think it's like a battle. I think there's certain people that want to release classified videos, and there's other people that don't. The fact is that these things, if they were a foreign government that had this type of tech, we wouldn't be number one, and we're still number one. But I think there's like very separate. So like we're talking specifically on like tech advancement and national security.
Yeah.
But then there's like a very separate religious perspective. And like, I think when you're talking about like biblical text, do many people know that the New King James Bible was actually rewritten? And why was it rewritten? Why were books removed? Why are there different Bibles in the Catholic text? Now, why are there different Bibles or books of the Bible in the Ethiopian Orthodox text? So there's like 88 books in total in the Ethiopian Orthodox text. And so like, I think that this gets into like a very religious perspective. But if you interchange, you know, the term alien, I don't call them alien. I say UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. That's what they commonly are termed as. We actually have a really high number of reporting here in Pinellas County.
Really?
Yeah, a very high number of people in the county have actually reported to see these things. And there's different hotspots around the world, but specifically in Alaska, definitely off the coast of Florida, around the Bermuda Triangle. So, you know, it's like not something, when I first started this stuff, they were like, oh, you're going to ruin your political career. And I've actually gotten more questions on this from people, very wealthy people, very powerful people, to your average Joe that pays attention to this because they realize they're like, there might be something there.
So the problem with the biblical stuff is that it's like this game of telephone, right? It's hard to know what actually happened 2,000 years ago or more than 2,000 years ago.
In what context, though?
Going back into antiquity.
Mm-hmm.
In a textual context or in a literary context, I'm talking about like going down to the bones of the language, right? Because like how many people do you know that can read ancient Greek fluently?
Or Aramaic.
Well, Aramaic and Hebrew. I mean, Hebrew only has what 7,000 unique words.
That's why ancient I like the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible.
Ancient Greek has over 1.2 million unique words. The Library of Alexandria was all Greek. There was no Hebrew. And when you go into antiquity, everything was written in Greek. The medical text, the legal text, the philosophical text, the historical, the comedy, everything was Greek. The only Hebrew is the Dead Sea Scrolls. The only Hebrew is religious stuff, and there's only 7,000 words. I've met maybe one or two people that can read Greek really, really well. And they're all, and you know, on top of that, there's, like you said, there's the Enoch book. There's all these other books that are left out that like go way against the narrative. And, you know, you can imagine if you're trying to create some sort of a, like Plato would call it, a noble lie for society, to keep society in line and to help your civilization thrive, you would want to take out some of that stuff and put in some of the good stuff, maybe change the meanings of some words. And over 2,000 years, just think like something you had for lunch 10 years ago or even last week, like your memory is so inaccurate from what actually happened. Now take it 10,000 years, or I'm sorry, 2,000 years, and translating it through different languages, through different text, through church fathers who are making money by preaching this stuff, and, you know, having the Council of Nicaea, depending on trying to come to an agreement of what it's going to be. Yeah, which Bible? Like, it's just like,
I'm glad you
we
brought that up.
don't know. We have no clue what actually happened back then. And there's absolutely people who had an axe to grind and a narrative to push. And
Ethiopian Orthodox text is direct translation, hasn't changed. It literally, in the 5th century.
What language is it in?
The Ethiopian language. If we can pull it up.
Find out what language the Ethiopian Orthodox
changed.
Text is.
The whole story on how and allegedly the Ark of the Covenant is housed in Ethiopia. Allegedly, right? There's a story there. But you kind of look at the fact that I believe it was the Council of Nicaea that actually replaced Enoch, the book of Enoch with Revelations.
Right.
You read Revelations, you're like, what the heck? So I would encourage everyone to read it. It makes a lot of sense if you read it.
And then
perspective.
Have you ever read the infancy gospel?
Of Jesus?
Yeah. Where he kills a kid?
I've looked into it. Well, he gets like angry, the kid falls.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And then he brings him back to life.
Yeah. No, he doesn't bring him back to life.
I think he calls him back to life because they're like, did you do this? And then he comes back and he's like, no, I fell. Jesus didn't, or yes, you didn't do it. Yeah,
The Ethiopian Orthodox Church uses guess?
Yeah,
That's what it's
guess.
called?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So it's just like...
It's preserved for spiritual and scholarly purposes. So it really hasn't changed. It's a very ancient language.
Right. Right. And then like also, I've had a lot of theologians in here I've talked to. And it's like, it's just kind of weird to me how people will dedicate their entire education, go to college for 8 years and to get a PhD in a science, right? Like you're studying the science of these ancient texts and translating the Bible and figuring out what it meant, but simultaneously subscribe to the belief, right? I don't have a problem with it, right? I have no problem with whatever your belief is. If it makes you a better person, God bless you. But isn't it a conflict of interest when you're actually studying a science of something and you simultaneously believe in it? Like people, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then, yeah.
Well, or I like the stories of people that have not started out as believers and then try to debunk the Bible and then end up not being able to and then becoming believers.
Yes.
Those are always
it goes both ways.
Yeah.
It goes both ways. And there's people who
I think though there's a really big portion of this discussion that when you have certain texts that are removed and have been known to be removed because they didn't adhere to whatever standard was. So I think the Book of Enoch was removed in the 5th century because it wasn't in line with what the Torah was. But the ancient Ethiopian Orthodox do have ties to the tribes of Israel, and they do think that it was actually something that they would consider a sacred text. And then you actually read what Enoch talks about. It's not like too crazy to be like, there's something there on this. But, that would get into the more the philosophical. So then you have this aspect of UAP. So what are these things? And I mean, it talks about in ancient history, the legend of Atlantis and the technology that was given to mankind. Maybe it could be an explanation. I don't know. People should look it up. And
the Atlantis thing's so interesting. It's so fascinating. But like, again, it's such an old text. And the game of, Steve, I know you have this. We got to pull this up. You have the chain of transmission for Atlantis. We've talked about this so much on here, like ad nauseum. So I'm sorry for everyone who's listened to this 100,000 times.
Yeah.
The chain of transmission for Atlantis is actually like 10 times crazier than any religious text. Like it's,
and like the legends of Atlantis.
The legends, like there's thousands of years of just verbal.
Plato had to go to Egypt to hear about the legend of Atlantis and reported it in his text.
Yep. And there's Pliny the Elder, Pliny the Younger, Solon, the Egyptian priest, and it wasn't written down until like 10,000 years after it was orally explained to somebody.
That
right.
Existed, yeah. Pretty wild.
But like Plato, he was also not a historian. He was a philosopher, and he would come up with theoretical, hypothetical, like social experiments or like what do they call it? You're good. Like war game experiments. And some people think that like, he came up with the allegory of the cave. And they think that this was like some people, like the skeptics, I guess you could call them, try to say this was like a hypothetical war game between Athens and like some other advanced civilization. Okay, so the destruction of Atlantis.
Wild war game. Glad our U.S. government doesn't do this.
Oh yeah, of course not. 9,000 years before Solon's Critias, right? So was the destruction of Atlantis. So oral history goes on for 1,000 years. Written down by the Egyptians 8,000 years before Solon. Of course, there's no actual writings. Priest records it, or the priest reads the records. Years pass. He tells the memory to Solon without consulting written records. Solon tells his relatives. Dropides tells his son Critias the Elder. At age 90, he tells his grandson.
Yeah.
And then 50 years later, Plato writes it down. Like
wild.
10,000 years. How many years of oral transmission is that? 8,000, 9,000 years? It's just like, it's wild.
If we had a time machine, it would be interesting to go back and see what happened. Give me a time machine for a day. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. But yeah, no. So like the UAP thing is interesting too. How like there is evidence. I mean, I don't know if you want to call it evidence, but there's connections in things like Enoch and these stories that suggest, and philosophers have suggested this, and like, you know, people like me who nerd out in the UFO topic, that this could be some civilization that's lived here on Earth for over 1 million years. And they could just be underground, or they could have been a breakaway civilization or something like this, part of Atlantis. If Atlantis was real and it was a super advanced civilization and there was a cataclysm, if God sent the flood, they escaped. And now maybe they've come back when things have calmed down, and they live here in like a higher dimension, similar to like we live on the same, like we live next to ants, but they don't know we're there.